M2 light tank. The M2 light tank was the early pre-war American light tank design before the United States entered World War II. It entered limited service beginning in 1935 and represented a transitional step between interwar tank concepts and wartime combat requirements. The most common wartime variant was the M2A4, which introduced a fully rotating turret mounting a 37mm M5 gun. Earlier versions relied primarily on multiple machine guns, reflecting outdated doctrine that emphasized infantry suppression rather than anti-tank combat. The M2A4 carried a crew of four: commander, gunner, driver, and assistant driver. The commander also served as loader, which reduced combat efficiency because one person had to manage both observation and ammunition handling. Armor thickness reached up to 25 millimeters on the front, which provided protection against small arms fire but was insufficient against anti-tank guns. The tank weighed roughly 11 tons and was powered by a Continental radial engine producing approximately 250 horsepower, allowing road speeds of about 58 kilometers per hour. M3 Stuart. The M3 Stuart entered production in 1941 as the direct successor to the M2 light tank. It retained the same basic layout but introduced thicker armor, improved reliability, and a standardized 37mm M5 main gun mounted in a fully rotating turret. The tank weighed approximately 14 tons in later configurations and was designed primarily for reconnaissance, screening, and infantry support rather than direct tank versus tank combat. The M3 used a Continental W6709A 7-cylinder radial gasoline engine producing about 250 horsepower. This gave the tank a high power-to-weight ratio, allowing road speeds up to 58 kilometers per hour. Its suspension system remained the vertical volute spring design, which was simple and durable but produced a relatively rough ride at high speeds. The vehicle carried a four-man crew: commander, gunner, driver, and assistant driver. In early models, the commander also loaded the main gun, which limited his ability to focus entirely on battlefield awareness. M5 Stuart. The M5 Stuart was an improved version of the M3 Stuart, introduced into production in 1942 to solve engine and crew layout limitations. While it retained the same 37mm M6 main gun and general dimensions, the M5 featured major internal redesigns that improved reliability, fuel efficiency, and crew effectiveness. Externally, it looked similar to the M3 but had a revised hull with a more sloped front glacis plate. The most significant change was the power plant. Instead of the Continental radial aircraft engine used in the M3, the M5 employed twin Cadillac Series 42 V8 automobile engines. These engines were connected to an automatic hydramatic transmission. This setup simplified driving and maintenance, especially for crews without specialized mechanical training. Combined output was approximately 220 horsepower, slightly less than the M3's radial engine, but improved transmission efficiency maintained comparable performance. Top road speed remained around 58 kilometers per hour. M22 Locust. The M22 Locust was a purpose-built airborne light tank developed to meet British requirements for a tank that could be delivered to the battlefield by glider. Development began in 1941, and production ran from 1943 to 1944 with approximately 830 units built. The design priority was minimal weight and compact dimensions, so the tank could fit inside a general aircraft Hemilker glider. The Locust weighed approximately 7.4 tons, making it one of the lightest tanks fielded by the United States during the war. It measured about 3.9 meters long and 2.2 meters wide, small enough for air transport but extremely cramped internally. The crew consisted of three men: commander gunner in the turret, driver and assistant driver in the hull. Because the commander also operated the main gun, his workload was heavy, reducing overall combat efficiency. The main armament was a 37mm M6 gun with approximately 50 rounds of ammunition. This was the same caliber used in the M3 and M5 Stuart, meaning its firepower was already outdated by the time the M22 entered service. Armor protection was extremely light to keep weight down. Maximum thickness reached about 12.7 millimeters on the front and roughly 9.5 millimeters on the sides. This level of protection was insufficient even against many heavy machine guns and anti-tank rifles. M3 Lee. The M3. Lee was developed in 1940 as an emergency solution to mount a 75 millimeter gun on an American medium tank before a suitable turret design was ready. At the time, U.S. industry could produce a 75 millimeter gun capable of firing high explosive and armor piercing shells, but engineers had not yet designed a turret large enough to house it. To avoid delays, designers mounted the 75 millimeter M2 or later M3 gun in a sponson on the right side of the hull. This arrangement allowed limited side to side movement, but prevented full rotation. In addition to the hull mounted 75 millimeter gun, the M3 carried a 37 millimeter M5 or M6 gun in a fully rotating turret above the hull. This meant the tank had two main guns. The 37 millimeter gun was intended for engaging armored targets at closer ranges, while the 75 millimeter handled both anti-tank and infantry support roles. The unusual multi-level layout made the tank tall, increasing its visibility and making it easier to target. The crew consisted of 6 or 7 men depending on variant: commander, gunner, loader in the turret, driver, assistant driver, and 1 or 2 crew members operating the 75 millimeter gun. The need for separate gunners increased crew size and internal complexity. Armor thickness reached approximately 50 millimeters on the frontal hull, providing reasonable protection in early war conditions, but quickly becoming inadequate as enemy anti-tank capabilities improved. M3 Grant. The M3 Grant was the British modified version of the M3 Lee, built on the same chassis and mechanical layout but redesigned to meet British operational requirements. While the American M3 Lee placed the radio inside the turret, the British chose to relocate the radio to the hull. This allowed engineers to design a lower profile turret without the tall commander's cupola found on the Lee, reducing the tank's overall height and improving its silhouette on the battlefield. Like the Lee, the Grant mounted a 75 millimeter gun in a right side hull sponson with limited traverse. This gun was the primary weapon for engaging both armored targets and fortified positions. A 37 millimeter gun remained mounted in the rotating turret above. The dual gun configuration required careful coordination between crew members, since each weapon had different arcs of fire and ammunition types. The 75 millimeter fired high explosive shells effective against infantry and anti-tank guns, while the 37 millimeter was intended for engaging enemy armor at shorter ranges. M4 Sherman. The M4 Sherman entered production in 1942 as the direct successor to the M3 Lee and became the primary American medium tank of World War II. Its defining improvement was relocating the 75 millimeter main gun from a hull sponson into a fully rotating turret. This allowed 360-degree engagement without repositioning the entire vehicle, dramatically improving tactical flexibility in combat. The early M4 mounted the 75 millimeter M3 gun, capable of firing both armor-piercing and high-explosive shells. This dual-purpose capability was important because American doctrine emphasized infantry support as much as anti-tank combat. The 75 millimeter gun could effectively defeat early German Panzer III and Panzer IV tanks and was highly effective against fortified positions and anti-tank guns. M4 A1 Sherman. The M4 A1 Sherman was one of the earliest major production variants of the M4 series and differed primarily in hull construction. Instead of a welded hull made from rolled steel plates, the M4A1 used a fully cast upper hull. Casting allowed smoother, rounded armor shapes and reduced the number of welded seams, though it required large industrial foundries capable of producing massive steel castings. Armor thickness on the M4A1 was similar to the standard M4 with approximately 51 millimeters on the frontal hull. The curved casting sometimes provided slightly improved ballistic deflection compared to flat-welded plates, though overall protection levels were comparable. Early production models retained the 75 millimeter M3 gun in a fully rotating turret. M4 A2 Sherman. The M4 A2 Sherman was a diesel-powered variant of the standard M4 series, distinguished primarily by its engine configuration. Instead of the radial gasoline engine used in the M4 and M4A1, the M4A2 was equipped with the General Motors 6046 engine. This power plant consisted of two inline six-cylinder diesel engines mounted together and linked to a common transmission. Combined output was approximately 375 horsepower. The use of diesel fuel reduced fire risk compared to gasoline and was preferred by some Allied forces. However, the U.S. Army primarily standardized on gasoline engines for logistical simplicity. As a result, most M4A2 production was supplied to Allied nations under the Lend-Lease program, particularly the Soviet Union and the United Kingdom, though U.S. Marine Corps units also used M4A2s extensively in the Pacific. M4A3 Sherman. The M4A3 Sherman was a medium tank variant that used a Ford GAAV8 gasoline engine instead of the radial or diesel engines found in earlier models. This engine produced approximately 450 horsepower, giving the tank a higher power-to-weight ratio than earlier Shermans and improved acceleration and hill climbing ability. Road speeds ranged from 40 to 48 kilometers per hour depending on terrain. Hull construction for the M4A3 was welded, similar to the M4A2, and it retained the vertical volute spring suspension. Armor thickness on the frontal hull measured approximately 51 millimeters in early models, with slope designs increasing effective protection. Later models received upgraded glacis and turret armor to improve survivability against heavier German tanks. M4A4 Sherman. The M4A4 Sherman was a specialized variant produced with a longer hull to accommodate the Chrysler A57 multibank engine. This power plant consisted of 5 Chrysler six-cylinder engines arranged around a common crankcase, producing approximately 470 horsepower. The design was complex and required additional maintenance, but it provided reliable power and allowed the tank to carry additional weight. The M4A4's extended hull increased internal volume, which allowed for improved crew space and ammunition storage. Armor thickness on the frontal hull was approximately 51 millimeters, similar to other early Sherman variants, with sloped surfaces providing better effective protection. Standard armament was the 75mm M3 gun in the turret, while many British M4A4s were modified to mount 17-pounder guns. M4A6 Sherman. The M4A6 Sherman was a rare diesel-powered variant designed to combine the benefits of diesel fuel with a welded hull. It used the Caterpillar D200A diesel engine, producing approximately 350 horsepower, and was intended for both reliability and fuel efficiency. The engine allowed sustained operation in harsh environments and reduced fire risk compared to gasoline-powered models. Hull construction was welded with armor thickness similar to other Shermans, approximately 51 millimeters on the frontal hull, with sloped surfaces providing improved effective protection. The M4A6 maintained the standard Sherman 5-man crew layout: commander, gunner, loader, driver, and assistant driver. Ammunition storage used wet stowage designs in later builds to improve crew survivability. M24 Chaffee. The M24 Chaffee was a light tank introduced in 1944 to replace the M3 Stuart. Its design focused on combining higher firepower with the speed and maneuverability expected from a light reconnaissance tank. The primary armament was a 75mm M6 gun, the same caliber used in early Shermans, mounted in a fully rotating turret with rapid power traverse. This gun provided the Chaffee with the ability to engage both light and some medium armor effectively while retaining excellent mobility. The tank weighed approximately 18 tons and was powered by 2 Cadillac Series 44 V8 engines connected to hydraulic automatic transmissions, producing a combined output of about 220 horsepower. The torsion bar suspension provided superior ride quality compared to earlier light tanks, reducing crew fatigue and increasing firing accuracy on the move. Maximum road speed was approximately 56 kilometers per hour, giving it significant operational flexibility. Armor protection was minimal to maintain mobility, with roughly 25 millimeters on the front and sides. The Chaffee carried a 5-man crew: commander, gunner, loader in the turret, and driver and assistant driver in the hull. Crew space was more ergonomic than in earlier light tanks, allowing better communication and quicker response times during combat. M26 Pershing. The M26 Pershing was a heavy tank introduced late in World War II to counter advanced German armor such as the Panther and Tiger. Development began in 1943 under the T-26 project, aiming to produce a vehicle with superior firepower and armor while maintaining reasonable mobility. The tank mounted a 90mm M3 gun, capable of penetrating the frontal armor of most German tanks at combat ranges. The Pershing's armor was substantially thicker than the Sherman, with frontal turret armor at 102 millimeters and hull glacis at approximately 101 millimeters. This provided U.S. crews with protection comparable to late-war German heavy tanks. The tank weighed around 42 tons and was powered by the Ford GAA-V8 gasoline engine, producing roughly 500 horsepower. Despite the added weight, it could reach road speeds up to 48 kilometers per hour, though acceleration and hill climbing were slower than medium tanks. From the early M2 light tank to the powerful M26 Pershing, we've explored every American tank used in World War II, showing how designs evolved and shaped armored warfare. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe, like, and leave a comment to stay updated with all our latest videos.